Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today for our Sustainable Surface Finishing webinar, Prevention Practices and Innovations. My name is Cassie Carroll, and I'm the Marketing and Outreach Program Director here at CDAC, the Smart Energy Design Assistance Center at the University of Illinois. But we're partnered here today with the Cook County Department of Environment and Sustainability and the BRIGHT program. So welcome, Donald Bruce, environmental engineer as well. Thank you for joining us. We're excited about this session because we're not only going to highlight just some good sustainable best practices for surface finishing and metal finishing, but also highlight maybe, hopefully, some things, some ideas for new ideas for your facility. We'll get rolling here. I just want to take a moment quickly to introduce our webinar speakers as well. Keith Brill is also on the line from CladRex. So we'll hear from CladRex later today about their company and what they're doing to be sustainable as well. Thanks for being here, Keith.
Thank you.
Thanks, all right. Keith. Really quickly, I just want to introduce a couple of the programs that made this work possible today. The Illinois Green Business Program, which is a partnership between CDAC, the organization I'm with, and the Illinois Green Business Association, and the BRIGHT program. So CDAC, or the Illinois Green Business Program, is a really great way to help businesses that are interested in going green. We try to be a resource hub for all of the tips, tricks, connections, incentives that are available out there to help you reduce costs, increase efficiency, and recognize you for your efforts. In our program, we have an assessment that identifies top opportunities for your company, or you can go all the way and get recognized and certified as an Illinois green business. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's why we're here. We're here to help businesses like yours be sustainable. And we partner with the BRIGHT program, the Businesses Reducing Impact on the Environment program. And Donald, do you want to talk a little bit about the BRIGHT program?
Sure. Thanks, Cassie. Yeah, the BRIGHT program was established by Cook County government. In 2022, we received federal funds through the American Rescue Plan Act for COVID relief efforts in Cook County. And about 10 million of that funding, overall funding, went to our Department of Environment and Sustainability to basically undergo a program that was called BRIGHT, Businesses Reducing Impact on the Environment, that focuses on pollution prevention in 4 priority industries: dry cleaners, auto body and repair shops, metal finishers, which we're talking about today, and food and beverage manufacturers. And basically, there's 2 major parts to the program. Number one is it offers free assessments to those to businesses in those 4 sectors in suburban Cook County. And number 2, it provides opportunities for funding for implementation of recommendations that come out of those free assessments. So we'll go into BRIGHT in more detail and the BRIGHT funding later. As far as the assessments, are pretty much free to any of those businesses, and there's a little more requirements for the grant funding that we'll get into. All right, thanks, Cassie.
Yeah, no problem. So today's webinar, we're going to talk about the things and the tips and tricks that we've learned across doing assessments and good things you should remember to reduce pollution in your business. Again, please feel free, if you have questions or comments today, either use the webinar chat or there's the Q&A box. You may need to find it under the More section of your navigation bar on your screen, but we will have time towards the end of our presentation to ask questions and open the room for discussion. So moving on, I'm going to pass it back to Donald to talk a little bit about pollution prevention.
Yeah, pollution prevention, P2, is any practice that reduces, eliminates, or prevents pollution at the source before it is created. If you look at the waste management hierarchy, the little graph on the right, the upside down triangle, or pyramid, it's got pollution prevention and source reduction is the most preferable way to really reduce pollution or eliminate it. Then there's reuse of materials and what have you, reusing things through your processes or what have you. Recycling is next preferable, Finally, treatment, of course, which is usually required by some type of permitting or regulation. And finally, the less preferable is just disposal, a untreated release. So there's, in addition to the hierarchy there, pollution prevention involves a variety of applications. It can involve energy efficiency, basically cutting down on greenhouse gases, big part of that, and just conserving energy and money. Elimination of toxics, reuse of input materials during production, and reduced water consumption. And pollution prevention, again, can reduce both financial costs, things like waste management and cleanup costs, and environmental costs, health problems, and environmental dangers related to pollution.
Thanks, Donald. And yeah, it's not just pollution or toxics. There's so many things like our air quality, our human health and safety that are included in pollution prevention. And why focus on pollution prevention? Because you're really also saving money by wasting less. The less solvent you use or recycle, or the more sustainable solutions you use, you can waste less energy or less chemicals needing to have to actually be disposed of. You can also increase resource and operational efficiency, reduce environmental impact and pollution. Of course, increasing that employee safety health is primary in the metal and surface finishing industry. And then really there's differentiation in the market. So many major corporations right now are looking for companies that actually are doing things that reduce environmental impact or having some sort of plans or initiatives in place or even a green team. So I work with a lot of companies that I see are being asked to start reporting environmental metrics, or what are they doing in bids actually? What are they doing to be more sustainable? And so it can bring a competitive advantage to your products and your business as well, with recruiting and gaining new customers, as well as that regional differentiation. And sustainability and pollution prevention also attracts and connects customers and employees who care about the community and the environment. We're seeing more and more today that employees and young talent are looking for places that have sustainability plans in place. So it's something that is driving and recruiting and attracting top talent. But it's also something that draws customers to your products or your business as well. So really, in the case of metal finishing and surface finishing, it's a lot of a lot of the big customers right now are looking for that in project proposals and different sorts of why should I go with your company? So it's really advantageous to not only think about what you can do to be more sustainable, but formalize it into something like a sustainability plan or an action plan that you can make progress on a yearly basis. But today we're going to talk about what are some things that you can include in that type of plan. We're going to focus on three core topics today. We're going to focus on energy efficiency, reducing toxics, and conserving water. So hopefully we'll leave you with some ideas of maybe practices that you can integrate into your business. We'll hear from Cladrex about what they are doing to be more sustainable, and then we'll talk about some incentives and financing that's available out there to help your organization achieve some of these practices and goals. But what we're seeing is, particularly for energy use, and we're going to go into that topic first, we're seeing that the biggest places where electricity is used in the finishing processes are ventilation and power supply. Those are the big energy hogs. You can see it's just about over 50% there of the energy pie. But things like your buildings and other types of energy uses are also a significant portion. You'd think pumps and motors or secondary process would be the big thing, but ventilation is really significant in terms of energy use in the industry. For natural things like natural gas, the fuel end use in those processes are usually tank heat or heating of different types of processes, and then even boiler losses for things like steam or compressed air. Well, boiler losses particularly are for steam and just the radiant heat from your boilers. Those are big areas where fuel is actually lost. when we're talking about natural gas use as well, which I think is really interesting. And what we talk about a lot is to focus on those big areas first that you're using a lot of energy as ways to really find opportunities for energy efficiency and reduction. Because energy efficiency, you're going to see that return really easily in the form of dollars and cents when you reduce energy use. Your financing department's going to love it. Your upper management and C-suite is going to love it as well. It's a really tangible way to start your pollution prevention activities at your company. So what are some things that you should think about when we come to, or when we talk about energy efficiency for your company? Repairing and optimizing air and steam leaks is one of the really, really key ways to reduce energy use at your facility. Looking at ways, doing a compressed air study or a steam study to identify leaks and repair those. There's great programs from ComEd Energy Efficiency Program and NICOR Energy Efficiency Program that will help pay for those studies, as well as pay for some of the, and provide incentives for some of the repairs at a higher rate than they might not normally do if you didn't work with them from the beginning. So optimizing and not only repairing air and steam leaks, but optimizing those processes as well is important. So evaluating how much compressed air do you use, and are there ways you can use the lowest pressure possible for your systems? The less compressed air you produce, the less you might waste. Also looking at things like no loss condensate drains on your air compressors. Those are just valves that actually help regulate the pressurization in your tanks, but it's a really great way to reduce air loss and also water loss as well. And you can also review steam distribution for efficiencies as well. Do you need steam across your processes or compressed air? Are there ways to eliminate maybe company-wide steam or air compression and just do point of use steam or air compression? Because that will reduce your energy use as well. Installing variable frequency drives on pumps and motors everywhere possible is one of the key ways that I know surface and metal finishing organizations can save a lot of money. And really this little graphic here on the right shows kind of how variable frequency controllers work. It optimizes the pumps and motors when they're not in use. They're not at 100% pull or draw. They really variable the frequency of how that pump and motor is used. So if you're not using it, it doesn't need to be on 100% at all times. And it really helps you reduce and control energy use in your pumps and motor processes. Also, rectifiers. I know a lot of facilities have older rectifiers and they still work. We see a lot of them that still function, but they are really inefficient, those older models. So thinking about upgrading your rectifiers to more efficient models and checking your rectifier joints for hot spots is a great way to reduce heat loss and also energy loss. So don't sleep on those rectifiers for sure. Think about ways, take a look at those and see, can we upgrade them? Can they be more efficient in generating the power needs that we need for our plating processes? Also, things like high efficiency air nozzles and knives reduce drag out and energy use overall. And also LED lighting. I know we talk a lot about LED lighting. Everybody knows about it. I have to say it. But one neat innovation is that in warehouses, there's actually a sensor that you can place on your lighting that's motion sensor. So lights will turn on as you walk past. You don't need to flip switches or anything like that, but they're really nice that they turn on when you're in the aisle rather than being on all the time or having a centralized motion sensor. And that's a big technology that we see a lot of warehouses and big operation areas use right now to reduce energy as well. Some other energy efficiency key things. We talked about ventilation being one of the most significant energy users in a finishing facility. Every 1,000 CFN of ventilation requires at least 1 kilowatt hour of electric load. So the more that you reduce your ventilation and think about ventilation efficiency, you can not only conserve electricity, but you might be able to conserve gas too, particularly in those colder months. So covering things like covering idle tanks when they're not in use reduces exhaust needs. heat loss, evaporation rates, and even energy use. So even just a cover that is a little still open, so there is that ventilation, but not fully open, can really reduce your ventilation needs. Also looking at things like demand use or gas detection technologies can even further increase the amount of efficiency of your ventilation. So it will turn on really only when it's needed or when this gas is detected that you need to exhaust. Also, lowering ventilation rates during downtimes is another great way to, for those facilities that aren't running 24/7, it's a great way to reduce ventilation uses as well. Because think about it, you're conditioning all of this air and then you need to ventilate it, of course. But the less you can ventilate, the less costly air that you've already conditioned is going out of your building. And you need to make that up, right? So you're using a lot of energy to ventilate. And these are just some really good strategies to help you think about ways to manage or reduce your ventilation. Also, HVAC, heating and cooling in facilities, is another really important aspect to look at because building and operations was that third bucket, right? So optimizing your chiller performance and thinking about ways to increase chiller efficiency is a great thing to think about with HVAC. Switching to high efficiency boilers or heat pump units where applicable, or even thinking about replacing those old hanging space heaters. We see a lot of dock doors with hanging space heaters, and they're really, while they still may work, they can be really inefficient for heating space and keeping your occupants in that area comfortable. So replacing those space heaters with more efficient units or technology is a great thing to think about. And also, where can you create those air barriers so that cold air from your dock doors isn't flowing throughout your entire facility? We've talked to a lot of facilities about different air barriers, and there's a lot of solutions from plastic solutions to modular walls. That'll help keep your heating and cooling systems, if you're cooling or heating the space, more efficient and effective. And of course, using programmable thermostats. And I say smart programmable thermostats so that you can actually program your heating and cooling when it's needed in your facility and have that access at the tip of your fingers or on your phone. Also, insulating hot water and steam lines as well as boilers will reduce the amount of heat loss from those systems. I know some facilities may use that as a heating mechanism for their spaces, but the more you can keep the heat in, the better for your hot water and steam lines. And then finally, consider electrification of equipment like hot water heaters for restrooms and hand washing if you have those kind of smaller units in your restroom areas of your facility. But electrification is a good thing to think about as well and can increase efficiency. Now, we're talking about a lot of high level opportunities today. But like Donald and I said, there are assessments that can hone in on what are going to be the most practical things for your organization. We look at all of these different opportunities when we come and do an assessment, but these are just some food for thought and tips and tricks that we've learned and seen to be effective at other facilities. Some other things, consider installing solar to produce your electric supply. If you can, there are some great examples of solar installed on different sorts of finishing facilities that account for anywhere from 40% all the way up to 100% of electricity coverage. So there's some tools that we'll talk about later today to help you uncover to see if solar is a really good fit for you. But in Illinois, there's incentives and also solar renewable energy credits specific to Illinois that make solar really advantageous for commercial properties. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Also, think about ways to recover wasted heat from exhaust to offset space heating. Or even look at combined heat and power systems. This is an example from one of my colleagues that's actually on the webinar today at the UIC at the Energy Resources Center at the University of Illinois, Chicago. Heat systems, basically, it's a heat capture to produce power is what CHP is. And you can provide electricity and steam for your facility. And really, CHP is a great strategy to help you reduce energy costs per product produced and basically manufacture more for less. So this is a little graphic on how combined heat and power works. You have your water, you have your fuel, and it goes into an energy and turbine. You have a heat recovery unit that provides your steam or hot water. And then that fuel goes into the turbine and creates electricity for your building, facility, or the grid. So this metal finishing facility, Lauren Industries, uses basically this combined heat and power to provide electricity for 100% of their facility needs, and some of their steam is used to heat processing tanks. So the generating equipment are reciprocating engines in this example. But if you're really interested in looking to see like, this sounds like something that might work for my facility, the UIC at ERC, or the Energy Resources Center, offers no cost assessments and technical support to help you identify and do studies of whether you think whether CHP might be good for your processes and how you might be able to implement it. So if anybody has any questions, I know Marcello is in the chat today. He can provide his contact information if if anybody's interested in combined heat and power. And now I'm going to turn it over to Donald to talk about some toxics reductions options, and starting with degreasers. Thanks, Donald.
Okay, thanks, Cassie. Yeah, the biggest toxic reduction we've seen for metal finishing involves the degreasers, cleaning metal parts and preparing metal parts for plating and processing and what have you. And probably the oldest, and fortunately it's being reduced significantly, is the use of trichloroethylene as a solvent for degreasing. And we'll talk more about that. Next slide. And a little bit of background. Trichloroethylene exposure has been an issue. Both factories, military sites, spills, surface water contamination, real bad problem in groundwater. There can be drinking water well contamination, vapor intrusion. It's a volatile chemical. It can basically volatilize and get through the subsurface, enter buildings. You got to worry about worker safety. And there's a lot of cost. We've seen a lot of TCE involved in a lot of Superfund sites and hazardous waste sites where the cost of remediation can go into the millions. So a little bit of background there. And in the metal finishing business, degreasers are used to remove basically residual grease or other dirt and particles and what have you from the metal object using cleaning solutions that typically contain solvents. And some of the solvents that are used can contain trichloroethylene, TCE, and other dangerous chemicals like NPB, 1-bromopropane. And they're volatile. You get solvent vapors, and it can pollute the nearby environment and your worker area. And there's alternatives to using solvents. And these particular solvents, which have been identified as toxic cancer-causing chemicals, these alternatives can include using some different solvents that are not quite as toxic as TCE and NPB, and possibly switching, if it works in your process, to aqueous cleaners, which would really be preferable to using solvents, and possibly adopting other mechanical cleaning techniques, ultrasound techniques, and what have you, or equipment substitution. Next slide. Okay, get back to TCE and NPB, solvents that have been used as degreasers. I think I mentioned they can affect the respiratory, central nervous systems, and repeated chronic or prolonged exposure to TCE has been associated with effects in the liver, kidneys, immune system, and central nervous system. TCE is known to be carcinogenic to people through all routes of exposure, inhalation, dermal, skin, ingestion. And for vapor degreasing, there are alternative solvents to TCE with similar performance characteristics that are available. Basically, what we call drop-in alternatives. Basically, if your degreaser equipment doesn't have to change very much, and you can put in these alternative solvents. Long-term exposure to NPB, talking about that a little bit, can have effects on the peripheral and central nervous systems, as well as have hematological blood effects. Next slide. Okay, other ways in reducing air releases, if you will, at facilities, and just basically reducing the amount of waste that is produced, is the subject of drag out. And drag out is basically the time when a part is drying while the solvent may be still present on the part. And it's actually the largest source of chemical release, typically leading to 3 or up to 8 times the emissions of diffusion of that solvent. So to reduce emissions due to drag out, it's recommended that the parts be removed from the degreaser once dripping stops completely, and that you hold the parts in a freeboard zone until they're completely dry before taking them out. And you use a mechanical transport to carry and move part loads, and use part holding fixtures that promote good drainage. So you basically, whether it's the solvents, the degreasers, your plating baths and what have you, you obviously, it's beneficial both from an environmental standpoint and a material standpoint and cost saving and reduction of waste standpoint to reduce the drag out of that material. Next slide. Managing drafts. Okay, to reduce emissions due to external drafts, you want to check the vents in your facility, avoid lip vents, and eliminate any external drafts around the degreaser in particular, because you don't want that vapor to basically emanate throughout your facility. To reduce emissions due to internal drafts, you can move the parts at a slower speed. You can keep a large cross-section of part loads 50% smaller than the corresponding degreaser cross-section areas. And you can use sliding covers to reduce drafts and turbulence. Basically, cover the degreaser when it's not being used. And of course, enclose open top degreasers again, cover them when they're not being used. Diffusion, to reduce emissions due to diffusion, you can add freeboard height to the degreaser. So there's that much more volume or area for the vapor before it's released. You can keep an idling degreaser covered, as we already mentioned. Overall, you want to reduce any kind of vapor displacement. And you can also, to the degree possible, lower the condenser temperature so that you don't have quite as much volatilization. Reducing emissions due to sprays is another good practice. You want to minimize spray use and keep the spray temperature near the boiling point. And you want to keep the spray nozzle below the cooling coils so that you don't get any spray at the height of the coil or above the coil by any means. And you want to use short spray burn. Next. Reduce emissions through equipment changes and upgrades. You can superheat the vapor. You want to install freeboard cooling coils, basically to condense the vapor and prevent its release, and also recycle it back into your degreaser. You can install secondary condenser coils to basically enhance the cooling coil mission. And you can install a third dehumidification coil and basically use closed loop solvent cleaning systems. Now, for degreasers, we mentioned the TCE and MPB were widely used in metal finishing. Hopefully, we're getting away from that. But there are safer alternatives. And for vapor degreasing, there's alternatives to TCE solvents that have similar performance characteristics that are available that you can basically drop into your current equipment. There's the different solvents. You can switch to aqueous cleaners. That's going to involve new equipment which may involve some capital costs. We'll get to that later. There may be some funds available to help businesses with that initial capital investment. And you can adopt other mechanical cleaning techniques or equipment substitution, things like ultrasound cleaners and things of that nature. EPA in particular has done studies. They're requesting additional comments, information, and data to assist in evaluating the availability of alternatives to TCE and vapor degreasing applications. Right now, they do recommend, if possible, to switch to aqueous cleaners. One of the things that we've seen over the past few years is people switching from TCE to NPB, and now they're, of course, being encouraged to switch from NPB to something else. So really the best solution long term is the aqueous cleaners or mechanical cleaning techniques. Next slide. CPA's understanding most vapor degreasing machines can be used with other solvents, as is or with minor modifications. There are significant hazards associated with the drop-in alternatives. Even those alternatives may have some toxicity or other environmental concerns. EPA, again, urging vapor degreasing facilities to think strategically long-term about their choices. Should they just replace or upgrade vapor degreasing equipment for the long term? And to the extent a process currently uses TCE in a vapor degreasing system that can be converted to a significantly less toxic alternative, such as an aqueous cleaning system, you will avoid a significant risk to your workers, and additional process changes can be avoided if any further regulatory action is taken on toxic alternatives. Next slide. And again, other best practices, in addition to what we talked about with degreasers, are just practices to extend the useful life of the processed bath for plating. And basically, it's different strategies that would extend the life of the processed solutions, reduce contamination and chemical loss, reduce input costs, materials, as well as cleaning and disposal costs. And measuring conductivity can indicate the cleanliness of water, and inexpensive equipment for regular reviewing efficiency and improving rinsing practices is another good practice. They've got activated carbon filters can be used to remove inorganic contaminants from electroplating baths as part of your wastewater treatment and what have you. Things inorganic such as nickel, copper, zinc, and cadmium. Greatly will reduce your sludge, basically, and your wastewater treatment costs and discharges. And more pollution prevention tips can be found. We have a useful, kind of another partner that both CDAC and Cook County and others, and a good educational source is the Minnesota Technical Assistance Program. And we've got the website there. We call it MTAP. And they've got a lot of good pollution prevention tips, metal finishing, and best practices. Okay, water. We talked about energy, conserving energy, cutting down on your utility bills, reduction of greenhouse gases. We talked about toxics reduction, things like solvents like TCE, NPB, basically overall toxic reduction. And then there's water, and with water, wastewater. And one of the first things a facility can do is conduct a water assessment to identify processes where water use can be reduced. Track your water use and product volume produced. Some municipalities have little apps now that basically tell you how much of their utility water they are using on any different day and what have you. You can use the high pressure, low volume nozzles for cleaning equipment. We talked about that a little bit with the I think spraying the degreaser solvents. That's HPLV, very important. So you have the high pressure but the low volume coming out. And looks at a little diagram there, getting back to the water balance. It shows you how much is coming in, how much is pre-treated, what goes to the cooling towers, the boilers, processing, and landscaping. And it basically tells you where your water is going. So you could sub-meter. You'd probably have to have sub-meters to look at the second part of that. Monitor rinse requirements, minimize usage, and reduce associated costs. You can put flow restrictors at water tank inlets to prevent overuse of water and overflow. Next slide, please. Okay, I got the flow restrictors, prevent exceeding a predetermined flow rate. You can put on automated rinse timers. They're better for intermittent rinses and eliminate operator error, so that you're only rinsing when you have to. So you don't got a constant rinse going. Spray rinsing uses less water than immersion rinsing and enhances draining over a process bath by diluting and lowering the viscosity of the processed fluid film clinging to the product. So they've got a lot of booth spray rinse booths that are being used now rather than the immersion tanks. Water fog nozzles for rack operations, particularly heated process tanks, reduce the rinsing load, drag out and staining of the parts. And the solution washes back into the same process tank. So you can basically can be reused if possible. Okay, Cassie, did you want to take it over of getting how we get started? Okay.
Sure. And, so we've talked a lot about different solutions, different options that you can take to not only reduce toxics, but water use and energy use at your facility. But I want to emphasize to start with small wins when you're starting your sustainability work, and grow those initiatives over time. You don't have to do everything at once. And again, try to really focus on those resource intensive operations. So places where you use a lot of chemical use, or you have a lot of vapors entering the environment, or where you're using a lot of energy, to really see those impacts. I know, and those early wins are places to really get your team on board with sustainability and efficiency. You can also, you don't have to fully implement a strategy. Sometimes you can test strategies before full implementation. And this is a really good way to say, well, we're going to test it, see if it works before we put this into full production. So there's particularly for solvent replacements, a lot of companies, you can work with them to get test product to use before you implement it and buy a whole stock. So work with your solvent supply companies as well to test things, or test little tweaks, say on your thermostats or your chiller efficiency, or optimizing equipment before you fully implement it. That way, it eases it in really nicely and makes sure that it's an effective strategy for your process. And engage employees in providing feedback. We usually recommend pulling at least a couple different people from, or at least one person from every department to participate in a sustainability group to generate ideas and implement solutions. So it's really embedded in your company, and everybody plays a role in thinking about sustainability or pollution prevention for your organization. And don't forget to share your stories and your successes. You can share your stories with industry associations on your website, and especially with employees. Demonstrate and show how those things, those little things that change in your facility, are really wins for your organization. That'll keep everybody on board towards the same pollution prevention and sustainability mission. But then sharing those things with your industry association can help spread good practices throughout your industry and amongst your peers. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to Donald to introduce our speaker today from Cladrex.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. Yeah, speaking of sharing your success stories and everything, again, this is a metal finishing webinar, and I realize there's a lot of different types of metal finishers out there. We've got the electroplating, electrolith plating, metal plating, painting facilities, powder coating. And we have Keith Brill here today from Cladrex. And he's here to talk about sustainability and pollution prevention accomplishments, some of the things that they've already done. And they are part of our BRIGHT program and what they may be planning to do in the BRIGHT program. And they are, Keith's from the Cladrex company. I'll let him take it and introduce his company. As you can see from the slide, they are North America's foremost decorative film to metal laminator. Okay, Keith?
Well, thank you for having me. Yes, we've through the years and that we've been around since 1960, and recently, in probably the last 10 or so years, we've been trying to be a good neighbor and do some of the things that many of the things that you've talked about, and we've used the opportunities when to make improvements in our process to add some of these sustainability features to our processes. And some of them were simple that, if you've ever walked through a Starbucks and you walk in their front door and they have an air curtain there to make an environmental break between the cold outside and during the winter. Well, we use that because our dock doors were open half the day, and we were losing tremendous amounts of heat, and the guys were having to wear winter coats throughout the day working in the plant. And we put an air curtain in and on our docks, and it reduced our average monthly heating cost by about $15,000. So that was one of the very low flying fruit, that was out there for us. But we've done. We do have a closed cleaning system, and we don't use solvents for cleaning our metal. We do use if you think of like a Scotch-Brite brush that spins at very high volumes, and we use Bondrite, which is an alkaline soap type thing, to basically clean our metal prior to it being laminated. And we've used that process, and in addition to that, we actually use a cyclone apparatus in that to get the medical particles out of the water, because it's a closed system. So we collect those metal particles that are coming out of the water, and we actually recycle those with our metal that we get from shearing our full sheets down to the sizes that our customers need. In addition to that, we worked with our one of our process suppliers to use a different oil skimmer. We put a new oil skimmer on so that we run all of our water into a large tank, and this oil skimmer now takes and recycles about 55 gallons a week of oil coming off of our sheets of metal, and we are able to recycle that too. So that was another a big one for us that we didn't have to worry about that getting contaminating our water, and that and when you contaminate the water, you leave particles on the sheets, and you don't get the laminated quality that you're looking for. One of the other things that we did is we replaced our actual laminator applicator, and we installed a recirculating adhesive applicator system with that. And that allowed us to reduce substantially the amount of flash off that was occurring in the adhesive, where we were having to add a lot of thinner basically to the adhesive to keep it the viscosity at the right amount, so that we could end up with using quite a bit of this thinner in our process. So that dramatically reduced that. We've done many other things with our process, where the water that we use to we have to cure the adhesive in our oven in order to make it or to activate it. And at the end of that, you can't put, we're reaching very high temperatures on the metal to do that. And we were experiencing that we were using a lot of water and to cool that down so that we could apply the vinyl to that at the end. And what we ended up coming up with was a chiller, and it took us a little bit of work to get the plumbing worked out properly on it, but we ended up being able to turn that into a closed system instead of just using straight tap water, basically constantly through our process to cool these sheets. And we turned it into a recirculating chiller system that consistently has our water temperature at about 65 degrees. And it really helped with our quality and our being able to maintain and take a variable out of our process when the metal would get too hot or wasn't, we would lose the ability to adhere the vinyl to the metal because the temperatures were getting way too hot. So we were able to do that, and that recirculating took us about 6 months to return our investment in that process. So one of the other aspects that we were able to do with that, it was our squeegee. We have squeegee rolls that take the water off of our metal so that we don't have to use energy other than the squeegee rolls turning to remove the water that's sitting on top of the sheet. So we use that after we wash it. And so our sheets are dry when they go into our laminator. And then once we quench the sheets, we have squeegee rolls that remove the water from the sheets. Again, when you're dealing with cold rolled metal and some of the hot dip galvanized that, you can't have water in between the sheets because they will end up coming back to you as a return because people don't like what that does to the metal, rust and everything else. So, but other things that we're using in our process, and that we trim off of the excess vinyl off the sheets, and we're recycling that. We have a baler, and we send that out. So we're trying to get to a zero landfill type thing. And all these little things, they do start adding up. We've upgraded all of our lift trucks to electric to improve the air quality in our plant. We have that tested regularly to make sure that we don't have any issues there. We want our workers to be safe. One of the bright projects that we are looking at too, we have a steam boiler in our facility, and we are adding going to add this year before the heating season the steam pipe insulation to reduce our heat loss for those. And then our biggest one that we're shooting for is that we have I guess it's around 64 years old now, oven that was very inefficient, and we're replacing that with a new oven at the end of this year. So again, trying to reduce our energy costs and at the same time improving our process. So and we've also one of the other things is we have relit our plant. We've done that in our office with LED lighting, and we put all those on motion sensors and that. So that was a huge improvement just from the environment, because the new lighting really made the place look better in addition to saving us some energy costs. So that was a big help for us. So
that's great. Thanks, Keith. That's a lot of stuff. Lighting and the curing ovens and the process, water reduction, waste, energy reduction. Looks like you guys covered pretty much all of it that we've been talking about.
We still have a lot of, we were given a lot of suggestions in that when we were applying for the BRIGHT grant, and we still have several things that we think we can improve on. So this is one of
Absolutely.
those things that's not going to. We want to keep moving on this to get as to be the best neighbor we can be for our environment. So
Excellent. Yeah, seems like we're never done, does it?
correct, correct.
But yeah, thanks again, Keith. Really appreciate that. I think I've seen your logo. You do the laminating pretty much of the water fountains, right? That you'll generally see in like
Yes,
hotels.
yeah, that's one of our bigger customers. LK, they make drinking fountains for a lot of schools and parks, and you'll see their little, not little, but they've gone to a lot of the water bottle refill type things. So,
Right.
and then a lot of our product goes up on roofs. We do make the edge that goes on the top of roofs that do the flat roofs. So no more of the tar and the gravel and all that stuff. You're seeing a lot more of the single ply roofing going up in the around the country. So
Oh, interesting. Okay.
and we're doing ceiling tiles too, for inside of buildings. So there's a lot of the decorative. We do a lot of decorative vinyls that look nice in ceiling tiles. So
Great.
Excellent. Thanks again, Keith. Appreciate it.
Thank
thank
I
you,
you.
think
Keith.
now, Kathy and Keith, we're going to go into the funding. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do want to pause though really
Sure.
quickly. If anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat or the Q&A box. Any questions for Keith on any of the things he's done at his facility? I know we do, and while folks are thinking, I know we do have one question about TCE alternatives like solvent names or aqueous cleaner names. One way, and I don't know if Donald, if you have any solutions, but one way, I put this in the chat, but this is the TURI, Toxic Seed Use
Yes.
Reduction Institute, the Cleaner Solutions database. Malhar, that'll give you some great ideas. So you can go to this, replace a solvent, and you can pick your solvent, which we have TCE down here. Getting to it.
Yeah.
TCE, and then you can have optional fields like if you're trying to get it off aluminum, or you're using aluminum as your metal, you can click search, and then it'll give you a whole list of different sorts of solvents and whether it's effective or not, what the contaminant is. Here's some aqueous different cleaners, what types of equipment it's used on, but you can also see some that were tested that weren't effective too. So this is a great tool that I use a lot to find different sorts of solutions for TCE and alternatives. So here is, I'll put the website in the chat as well. But
Yeah,
Donald, do
yeah,
you
that's
have
an
any
excellent
other?
tool, Cassie. It's a very good tool, and that's also the organization that'll do some testing. Although,
Mhm,
unfortunately, I think they do charge if you're outside Massachusetts, but I
mhm,
think it's pretty much a minimal charge and probably well worth it if you want to test a particular solvent. And I think that tool really illustrates there's no silver bullet name for like a solvent replacement, but it really depends on the type of metal that you're cleaning
mhm,
and your process and what have you, and your basically your customer requirements too.
mhm.
And that would probably help you narrow it down quite a bit.
Yeah, and you can reach out to them if you have a particular solvent or process that you'd like more information about different cleaners. We can help, but also Turi, you can reach out to them and they can help you find some solutions as well. Great. Do we
Any
have
questions for Keith in particular about what Cladrex has done? No, good.
I just have a question, Keith, before we move forward.
Yes.
How did this all begin for the company? Was it something that some of your staff really were driven to do, or was it management, or what was the reason to start this sort of work in your company?
Well, I think it started with the air curtain, and uh, that was actually something that I saw when I walked in. But we have our plant manager has been involved with a lot of this, and it's kind of snowballed with the employees and with management, because we can see the benefits of this stuff, and the guys with their work environment has improved, and so it's been a win-win for everybody, I think, along the way. It's
Having a blast of 40 below wind chill air coming in the suburban Chicago winter will get things started.
Yeah, it's that was the first thing. Anyway, we were seeing that there was a lot of lost warm air coming out of our building. We
Sure.
actually had some people call from the tollway, indicating that they think a building was on fire because of so much steam was coming out of our boilers and things. So we haven't had any of those calls in a long time.
Thanks, Keith.
Um,
Does anybody else have any more questions? Let's see. It doesn't look like it. All right. Well, thank you, Keith, so much for sharing your story today. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll have a little bit more time. I know we are going to go about another 10 minutes over today. So just as a FYI, we'll continue to go through. We want to touch on some incentives, support, and funding. And if you can't continue to join us, will record this session and we can provide you the link afterwards. We understand. But thank you, Keith, for all about CladRex. Keep going.
Thank you.
So talking about some support and funding opportunities for all of the different things that we shared today in our session. Donald unfortunately just hopped off. I think he probably had some computer issues, but I do want to highlight what the Bright Grant Program and Assessment Program does. So the Bright Program is available to Cook County businesses. I know, Keith, you participated in this program to get an assessment and have applied for a grant. But for organizations that are located in suburban Cook County and are a metal finisher or auto body or food and beverage, it's not just food and beverage, but metal finishers can participate in an assessment. And it's really great. They partner with the Comet Energy Efficiency Program and the NICOR Energy Assessment Program to get those energy efficiency assessments as well. The results of the Bright assessment, you'll get a report that highlights the good things that you can do to reduce your pollution, energy use, water use, et cetera. So it kind of provides a roadmap for you to reduce utility use and toxics at your facility. To be considered for the grant, you must complete one of those Bright assessments if you're located in Cook County. You must have no more than 500 full-time employees. You must be in operation prior to January 1st, 2020. You must have experienced negative impacts due to the pandemic and demonstrated by proof of revenue loss. And then businesses that do qualify for grants based on the different opportunities that they have in their business have to participate in 3 sustainability trainings. But businesses that apply for grants can get up to $300,000 for those recommendations outlined in the Bright Assessment Report. And 100% coverage can be provided for top pollution preventing projects. Things that are up to 50% of a cost share would be available for other recommendations, and 25% cost share for any fossil fuel based recommendations. So you can get up to $300,000 for pollution prevention, best practices or opportunities at your facility. So I'm going to put this link in the chat, but please apply for the Cook County Bright program so you can access those assessments and funds if you're located in Cook County. Also, if you're located in Cook County, you can participate in the Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy Program. This is also available across the state of Illinois, or your local county or municipality might have a program. But the PACE program is a way to finance all of these energy efficiency, renewable energy, water reduction projects. So it's low cost, long-term financing for this work. And you can get up to 100% upfront financing from private capital funders for qualified things such as HVAC lighting, solar, and many more different types of things, and existing buildings and new construction projects. So check for your local CPACE program, or if you're in Cook County, the Bureau of Economic Development can really help you connect to that program as well. So you don't have to shell out a bunch of cash to do these sorts of things. There are different financing options available for you as well. There are also great programs from the Midwestern or the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District in the Chicagoland area. You can schedule assessments to have staff come out and evaluate your water use. So if you're interested in that, MWRD can help. The University of Illinois Chicago Energy Resources Center also provides similar program to the BRIGHT program for businesses. So Marcello's contact information was further in the chat, but if you're a City of Chicago-based business, you can access no-cost assessments and support as well from the Energy Resources Center at University of Illinois Chicago. So take advantage of that program as well. Also, the U.S. Department of Energy has the Industrial Assessment Center, also partnered with the Energy Resources Center. It's a federal assessment and grant program for companies under 500 employees. And they manufacture, it could be metal finishers and surface finishers as well. And they also offer a potential source of funding for organizations and industrial centers as well. So please check that program out too. That's also available to any organization in the Midwest area. So Industrial Assessment Center is a great resource too. Whoops. The Energy Star Industrial Assistance Program can help you reduce energy use through trainings and networking opportunities with similar businesses. So if you're looking for more of a roadmap on energy efficiency, the Energy Star Industrial Assistance Program is a great place to network with other facilities, looking at benchmarks, and get technical support for energy efficiency in your facility. And finally, the Illinois Sustainable Technology Center also offers comprehensive assessments for manufacturing facilities across Illinois. So there are tons of resources available to help you build that roadmap and identify opportunities to reduce pollution in your facilities. There's also the Illinois Green Business Program, which we can help you get recognized across 6 areas of sustainability. We help assess opportunities, help you take action, and then help you get recognized as an Illinois certified green business. So if you're looking for a statewide recognition as well as support, this is also another great option for your company. Finally, I want to just mention some funding opportunities. There's tons of funding opportunities out there from the infrastructure law and BIL, the IRA, all of the acronyms, but there's a lot of different funding as well from your local utilities. If there's anything that you're doing along the lines of energy efficiency, reach out to your local utility before you do that project. ComEd has no cost assessments as well as NICOR. North Shore Gas, Ameren, Illinois, they all have great programs and incentives that are available. Again, they usually require you to engage prior to doing a project. So be sure that you reach out to them and connect with them prior to doing some work. And of course, Donald and I can help you with that as well and get connected to your local utility representative. But don't leave that money on the table. Every time you pay a utility bill, you fund some of these incentive programs. So please explore what's available in the incentives that are there for you. There's also support for folks that are, I know this is really small and I will send out the slides afterwards, but for folks switching forklifts out to electric, like Keith did at CladRex, there are incentives for battery chargers through the Instant Discount Program. So please look for those incentives. Ameren, Illinois also has comparable incentives as well. But if you're looking to switch to EVs for some or electric vehicles for some of your fleet, there are not only federal tax credits, there are state incentives for EV charging and also incentives from your local utility. So particularly for ComEd customers, if you're getting an EV or purchasing an EV, you can get a federal clean vehicle credit for up to $40,000. And you can also get from ComEd another incentive. Even a light duty vehicle, you can get $5,000 to $7,500 back on that purchase. For EV charging, there's a federal tax credit up to 30% of the cost to purchase and install the charging stations. Illinois EPA has had a charging incentive program for level 2 chargers and above. And then ComEd also has charging incentives as well. If you are in Ameren, Illinois territory, there is an EV rate program. So for folks that are charging, they don't give incentives. I haven't found anything on the actual chargers themselves. but the energy that you're using to supply your chargers, they can provide you with a rate program that reduces costs, which is pretty neat. So capture some of that funding as well if you can. And finally, solar is a really great option to explore for businesses in Illinois. There's not only the 30% federal tax credit for renewable energy projects, there's a 35 to 40% solar renewable energy credit that can cover that percentage of cost. And then businesses have the extra advantage of taking the maker's depreciation tax credit, which lowers the project from anywhere to you get 80 to 90% of the total cost covered, and you're left just with the remainder. So you can go on ComEd.com/mygeneration and actually take a look and see what would solar look like for my property, and they can give you some baseline estimates. Also, community solar is another option if you just want to procure renewable energy for your facility. Think about community solar, which is basically a big solar development that you can then buy into and get your power from a renewable energy source. And then here is, there's also resources for Ameren, Illinois. They have similar resources in Ameren, Illinois territory as well. So consider solar, consider renewable energy. It will lower costs and you can harness that power of generating clean electricity for your processes. Okay, and I know we have covered a lot of information today. Again, I will send the recording of this session along with the slides, and the slides have a ton of links, so please use this as a resource. But if you need any support or help, please feel free to reach out to us at CDAC or the Cook County Bright program if you're in Cook County for more support. I'm looking at the chat here. It looks like we don't have any other questions at the moment. But I just want to thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Donald, so much for presenting on behalf of the Cook County Bright program. And Keith, thank you as well for sharing about CloudRx. If you have any questions, reach out, but I hope you all have a wonderful day. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
Keith.
for being here.
Thank you, Cassie.
Thanks,
everybody.
Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.